Hello there. I haven't done a video on here for a while and I'm going to start now. I've been kind of doing it on my Instagram, so if you've got Instagram, it's the same, at the PsychMed Sanctuary. And I know that the PsychMed Sanctuary, the name I tried to come up with, it was tricky because PsychMed and Sanctuary together, something about it kind of doesn't really fit, does it? But in a sense, I quite like that because I am trying to create sanctuary for those going through this awful thing of basically being harmed and having side effects that doctors don't believe, and then you're left to deal with it. You're often given more medication that then makes it worse. And I mean, I'm speaking about this very casually, but it was not casual, the stuff that happened to me. I'm currently in Devon. Look at that. Beautiful, huh? And I've got my dog. Are you coming, Wix? And it's absolutely freezing. So anyway, I thought it's best to come out because it's so beautiful. I probably would have stayed in if normally, but I thought, you know what, the sun is out. It's been raining a lot over here in the UK, and yeah, it's just good to get the sunshine. So I am off my Benzo. It has been a little over 2.5 weeks. I know it's still early, but I'm feeling okay. I had a bit of a rush of anxiety 1 week out. I had a stressful situation, and I could tell it was sort of that chemical rush. We were like, oh my God, I'm just being hit by random anxiety, which was crazy to have because, I mean, my story is very long, and if you see my other videos, then you'll know. And it's on my website, thepsychmedsanctuary.com, my whole story. I kind of need to update it now that I have actually got off the Benzo and the quetiapine. But basically, I was on Lorazepam for 6 months, 1 milligram, took it every day, was told to take it for tinnitus. I had tinnitus and I had broken sleep in the pandemic. And basically, that broken sleep turned into me becoming incredibly unwell, losing a lot of weight, started having anxiety throughout the day, tremors, all sorts of things. And at the time, nobody really knew what was going on, and thought that I was going crazy. You right, Wix? Morning. You're right. So, yeah, and it was really such a strange time because also at the pandemic, it's easy for people to call you crazy, and they do anyway with this whole lark, don't they? So I basically ended up kind of knowing that there was something wrong and went to the doctors numerous times. The doctor kept on saying it was me, that maybe I needed antidepressants because of this crazy anxiety. And before all of this, I wasn't really an anxiety sufferer. Definitely had my moments, but it wasn't something that I really struggled with, you know? Look at this. How beautiful. Wow, the light. Had to go for a minute because I was just adoring the light. This is what happens when you basically get off a Benzo. I mean, I don't want to speak too soon, and I'm touching wood because, you don't know. But anyway, so I basically ended up in the most horrendous Benzo withdrawal because I decided to stop the medication. The doctor said I could just stop it overnight. I thought there was something wrong. I'd Googled it and I was like, this doesn't feel right. But still it was so confusing because the doctors are telling me that it's me. So then I stop it, and within a week I'm in full Benzo withdrawal. Like, I remember I had a brownie at a market with my friends, and I also had some wine. The doctor said that I could drink, and there was absolutely no problem in drinking. I loved my red wine. Not like alcoholic, but, you know. So, yeah, I basically had a brownie, and something about that, I mean, it was already on its way anyway. I could really feel it. But then all of a sudden it was like, whoa. And I came out of my body and I had derealization, basically. Like, I just completely left my body. It was the weirdest thing. Like, I know everyone knows what this is. Wicket's covered in mud. Joys. And basically from that point onwards, I was in horrendous benzo withdrawal, and I didn't sleep. My ability to sleep completely went, and I'm talking 0 hours, 0. Hang on, there's a truck. It's quite hard doing it because there's a lot of people. Look at this light. There's a lot of people basically walking along here. So, as I was saying, I was in horrendous benzo withdrawal, didn't sleep, and so I declined quite quickly, to be honest. And I'm somebody who got drunk off 1 glass of wine. I never took medication before, and any kind of other drug, for example, like in my 20s, I tried weed once and I vomited everywhere. I tried ecstasy once, I completely blacked out. Like, I think that I'm just really sensitive anyway. So CTing a benzo for me, it completely blew me apart. Blew me. And basically, I ended up going back to my dad's because it was still lockdown time, so it was the worst time ever. And he lives in Spain, and there was no support for me in London. I couldn't drive the car. I was living with my friend, she couldn't support me. I was like in her living room, pacing around with chemical terror. And so I basically managed to get on a plane. At this point, I still didn't know. I was being told that it was me and I was crazy and I was having some sort of breakdown. And my friends at the time were trying to be really supportive and help me through it, which was really sweet of them. But it's quite hard to be around somebody that is just in a constant state of panic. Constant. It's a bit muddy, isn't it, Wicket? Let's go back. So anyway, yeah, basically, I still didn't know, and I went to a benzo specialist, apparently a psychiatrist who was like £500, obviously, in London, and he said, you're in benzo withdrawal. So then that was the first I sort of heard of it, really properly. I kind of knew what was going on, but, it was such confusing information we were getting. So what happened was, he said, why don't you try taking the Lorazepam again? And I tried taking it again, and I basically kindled. At that time, I didn't know what that was. It didn't help, and it made me feel way worse. Then, when I got back to Spain and I got on the plane, the doctor said, take 4 milligrams of Lorazepam to get on the plane because that will help you calm. I was actually a zombie on the plane. I didn't even know how I took 4 milligrams. Anyway, so I did that, got to Spain, and I don't know why I thought that was a good idea, but at least I was then with my dad, who I guess I'm not on my own, and he can drive me places if I need to go anywhere, or try and get help. But at this point, the benzo withdrawal is so bad because I've not only tried to take it again, I took 4 milligrams to get on the plane. Then a doctor in Spain said, oh, she just needs to change over to Valium. She's on such a small dose, 1 milligram of Lorazepam, which is not a small dose. That's 10 milligrams of Valium. He was like, why don't we switch her over to 5 milligrams of Valium? But let's do a straight switch. There's absolutely no need for a gradual switch. So I just feel like I'm in the mercy of doctors because I'm saying, no, it needs to be gradual because I've already been looking online. And no. So basically, the straight switch completely blows me apart and I feel like I'm melting on the floor. I even try and do a boxing lesson. I'm seriously fighting the whole way through, and my dad just doesn't understand. He just thinks it's me. I'm making it all up. And it's quite clear that his daughter's not well. But my dad tends to just ignore what's right in front of him. He's not very good with, if I dye my hair red, he just wouldn't even say anything. He'd be like, oh, hi, darling, what do you want for dinner? You know what I mean? It's like right in front of him, there was somebody who was losing a lot of weight quite drastically and also just looking really unwell. So it's kind of like, okay, mental health, but it just looked way more than mental health when you look back. Wow. So, I don't know why I'm going through this all again, but it's quite nice to recap for maybe the new people on the page. So basically, I then what do? The Valium. So then that's when I get sectioned for the first time, because I'm in such a bad way. I start bashing my head against a wall, like literally running into like some wooden floor, like a wooden wall, and like literally running into it. I mean, it was quite, I mean, it was like something out of a horror film. I've actually read about this, that a lot of people in benzo withdrawal and psych med withdrawal will take to bashing their head against the wall. So my dad obviously was worried, you know, looking back, but he wasn't helping it. I mean, he was literally like goading me, telling me the whole time that I need to sort myself out. He had his horrible friends come over and they also started to bully me, which was not very nice, to be honest. And it all became like 3 against 1, which it didn't really need to be. Like, I was telling them that I was suffering and it was from the medication, and I wasn't being horrible or rude to anyone. But I was just suffering. And his friend, Pauline, she was like, why, you know, I would just stay in my room with like akathisia rolling around on my bed. I was trying to keep out of the way. And my dad would force me to go to dinners and be like, God, just get yourself together. You know, like really, really awful. And his friend Pauline would just be like, what's wrong with her? You know, this is ridiculous. Like kind of feeding the whole thing. So I had zero support. It was like the opposite. Awful, the stuff that he did. I mean, yeah, he doesn't have any time for like anyone suffering or just actually listening. So that was hard. And that's also why things just went so badly wrong from here. So his friend Pauline was like, take her to the hospital. And then they were like, oh, okay, maybe we'll keep you overnight in a psychiatric unit. And this woman was like, this horrible woman, she was like, you can't be in, there's no such thing as benzo withdrawal. There's no such thing. And actually that's not possible. And what you really need is you need to be observed in our unit, and we've got medication that can help this. I'm like, what planet is this woman on? What medication is going to stop me pacing across? I mean, honestly. And also, it's so dark because the medication they've got is like, it puts you to sleep. Like, I mean, I didn't put me to sleep because I was so acute in benzo withdrawal. My akathisia was so severe that, I mean, they gave me like heavy doses of olanzapine, and, you know, that's like a knock you out drug, you know, turn into a zombie. I mean, that's kind of what they do. They get people in there, drug them to death, so they're just sat there like a gormless, you know. I mean, it's really disturbing stuff. And also at that point, I was still very lucid. Like, I was telling them very clearly what had happened to me and that I'd been on a benzodiazepine and I stopped taking it and I had an immediate reaction as soon as I came off. And anyway, talk about hell on earth. So I end up in there for 3 days. And I being an actor, I try to pull my best acting in terms of I try to act normal. I mean, it was very, very hard. And ironically, there was a guy in there from Teddington, which is where I used to go to school when I was younger, in Spain, in a psychiatric unit. I mean, what are the chances? Anyway, the people in there were absolutely terrifying. He was the only guy that spoke English. None of the nurses spoke English, and they just gave me loads of meds, and it made everything worse. And by the time I came out of there, it felt like my body had like I couldn't move my limbs and I was walking through mud. And I still had this like terror through my body the whole time, and I couldn't sleep. So of course, you know, I'm even worse than I was before. So I just keep declining and being with my dad, who, you know, just thinks I'm insane, keeps on threatening to send me back to the psychiatric unit if I don't kind of get better. And what is so bizarre, it's like, I don't think, just looking at me, that I'm going to get better just by saying, get better! You know, I mean, the way that he dealt with it. You know, and even now, like, he says to me, but it was very difficult. It's very difficult. Yes, it's difficult, but even so, there are ways to deal with it. And when I met my friends in this time, because it was the pandemic, so I was largely with my parents, who are just from another planet compared to me, to be honest, in terms of like how to listen, how to deal with other people's emotions, you know, all of that. But when I saw my friends, even when I was in akathisia, it felt instantly better, even though that doesn't solve anything. But it's like I could really feel this just horribly unsupportive energy from my parents. So anyway, I had no support system, got out of there, somehow spoke to the nurse on the ward and the head of the nurses, almost like that film, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And there's like that head nurse, it's really evil. There was one in this Spain. And she was like, I was like saying to her, like, yeah, I really want to go back to the UK because, you know, I really want to like get on with my music and my sound healing. And I was pulling every bone in my body to basically try and get out of this place and appear normal, even though I had akathisia tearing through me and I felt like the gravitational pull of the earth was crushing all my bones. I mean, seriously, it was like something that you would expect like in a torture chamber, of some sort of army torture chamber. Do you know what I mean? How to get people to like confess something. Anyway, so I'll carry this on in the next clip. Anyway, there's a lot that went on, and I won't go through it all. But I guess I wanted to just say and sort of explain how bad it was. And I end up in 2 more psychiatric units in the UK. Cars. 2 more psychiatric units in the UK, and they basically keep drugging me. Nothing gets better, obviously. And really, it goes to new realms of absolute horror. I mean, I was in full psychosis for months, pacing my mum's living room, and I was sort of deserted by everyone. I mean, what do people do when it gets to that? But it was so extreme. I mean, I didn't have any normal sensation in my body. Things I felt like I was, there was so much that went on. I mean, in my psychosis, I had full hallucination in the end. And I got down to about, I'm going to say 5 or 6 stone. And basically, that was the second time I ended up in a psychiatric unit because they really needed to get me into hospital so they could basically rehydrate me and try and get some food in me. Because at that point, the food was really like hurting to eat. And I was just pacing all day, like there was no moment where I sat down. Really, really disturbing stuff. I mean, I do think, you know, if you were to give animal poison, what would happen to them? You'd see them squirming, and it's very much like that with the akathisia. It's like your system's poisoned. Anyway, I don't know why I'm doing the video here, but I'm on a really steep hill. So anyway, it's been 2.5 weeks since I've been off the benzo. I reinstated 8 months out. Pure desperation, to be honest. You know, fair enough. And to be honest, oh, for God's sakes, wicket. I don't want that to go everywhere. I'll carry this on in a bit. Okay, I've had a shower. No makeup on, wet. So, to conclude, if I can, so I'm currently 2.5 weeks off the benzo, and it was just a wild journey to reinstate one morning. So really it was, I met somebody online who had obviously gone through the same thing. Obviously we meet many of them, don't we? But this guy was actually somebody who kind of knew my dad, but they weren't friends. It was like through kind of social circles. And my dad at this point had sort of blocked me on everything and sort of disowned me as his daughter. But he ended up on a sailing boat, and on that sailing boat was a guy called Hans. And Hans was tapering his antidepressant on the sailing boat because he has to like take little bits throughout the day. And my dad asked him what he was doing. And basically Hans said, "This is what I'm doing." And my dad was like, "Well, my daughter's currently in a psychiatric unit in the UK. And, you know, she keeps on saying that this drug, Lorazepam, has caused her all these problems. And, but, you know, we just don't know what to do." And I don't know. I mean, my dad just thought I was crazy. So at that point, Hans tells him that it is in fact 100% the drug, considering that I took it for 6 months and there was no taper and I was given a whole load of other medication. So I then get my dad in touch with me, and he tells me Hans's number. So I speak to Hans, and this is one of the first people I speak to who I actually feel gets it. You know, it's really hugely powerful validation, especially when you're in the most terrifying situation of anyone's life with no support. So Hans basically says to me, well, you know, these are the options. And he said, you know, you could take a little bit of Lorazepam, but when he says a little bit, he was like, take a tiny amount. So I had this in my mind, but, you know, at this point, I'm still in a sort of a psychosis. I'm pacing, I'm screaming, I'm in all sorts of, you know, and I'm thinking, well, that's not going to work because I'm really far gone. And, you know, everyone has suicidal thoughts in this whole experience and just wants it to end. I was praying for euthanasia. I was even like going to actually organize it somehow. I mean, I don't know how, because I don't know how I would have got the money, but I was actually communicating with people in Sweden to be like, please, you know, I need this. And anyway, so one morning, as I say, one of the nurses, the NHS nurses that come around and observe you and say, oh, yeah, she's maybe she's a drug addict, or they make all their assumptions. She left a bottle of Lorazepam in the house, and I think it was just like I sort of thought about taking the whole bottle, and I thought maybe that would just put me into a really relaxing sleep, you know, because you just think of anything when you're in that much torture. But I didn't do that because I was too terrified, and in the end, I took half, 0.5. Anyway, I was lying in the bed, well, not lying, rocking around in the bed, and Wicket, my dog, was in my armpit. And I looked down and I thought, I can actually feel love towards my dog. That's weird. And then I sat up and I was like, I don't think I've got akathisia. I've got normal thoughts. And all of a sudden I just felt like me again. And I was like, I'm here. It was the weirdest. I mean, in half an hour, this happened. I walk downstairs and I say to my mum, I'm normal. Now, my mum has some own challenges of herself. I mean, she's never been diagnosed with anything, and I don't think it is anything that you can diagnose. She's just a very confused human. And it can be very challenging. So being at hers was really hard. But yeah, I mean, I can't believe she doesn't speak about this more, because it must have been quite crazy to see her daughter in so much pain for months on end, and then all of a sudden she's okay. And my mum's just like, oh, you know, there's something not quite right there. But anyway, that's what I was dealing with. So, yeah. And then from that point onwards, I put one foot in front of the other. I managed to find a private psychiatrist who would give me this medication, Lorazepam, because over here in the UK, the NHS do not prescribe it. You have to go private. So I had to jump through a lot of hoops. I had to pray. I had to distract. I had to do everything I could. And my baseline was sort of okay. But I knew that I needed to taper off all of this medication because I knew I couldn't stay on it. And I was on a very high dose of quetiapine at that point, 400 milligrams, 30 milligrams of mirtazapine. Those were given in the last psychiatric unit. And I just kept taking it because the nurses would come around and observe me, and, you know, people would be like, are you taking your medication? And you'd kind of be forced. And I thought at that point, well, I'll just take it because I'm not, you know, I was so bad. Anyway, so then, yeah, I mean, it's 3 years later. I managed to get off the quetiapine. I'm now off the benzo. I've got the mirtazapine left. So I did a water taper of the Lorazepam, and I basically, from the reinstatement, I left it about 3 weeks, but the quetiapine was really affecting me. Like, I'd sort of stabilized to this baseline, but when I took this 400 milligrams at night, I just felt like I was melting into the bed. I had akathisia type symptoms. It was quite clear to me that the quetiapine had to be focused on first. I mean, I didn't know if I was going to just be thrown into withdrawal at any moment. Maybe I'd get tolerance, or I don't know. But I just prayed that it would be okay. And I don't know, it's a miracle. So I started tapering the quetiapine, and that got better for me, you know, this horrible feeling at night. Got it down to 100 milligrams, and then it was really like I had to stop then because I was getting a lot of side effects and it was really hard to move it. So I paused, and then I decided to leave it at 100, hold it, and then I started tapering the benzo, water tapering the benzo, and I tapered it down to 0.125. And that took, I don't know, 8 months, 7 months. So I held it there because people say that sometimes if you have the benzo, it helps you get off, you know, and I still had this 100 milligrams of quetiapine. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to take this risk. It was a lot of thinking and making this decision, but I was like, okay, I'm going to make this decision. I held the benzo, and basically I started tapering the quetiapine, and it was so much easier. God, I've just noticed what it looked like. It was so much easier. It was like, yeah. And basically I managed to get down from 100, and I did like micro taper. I dry cut all the way down. I was also told that I couldn't cut the extended release pill, but I didn't want to change to liquid or instant because I knew that that would destabilize me. I was so sensitive. So I dry cut all the way down. I got off it, and I'm okay. I'm here. So it was long. It took a long time. My jaw is always so stiff. I paused, and then I started my benzo taper, my water taper, and I did the last bits over like 4 months. And, you know, they say the last bits are the worst. And I just felt like it was very important to do because it was the causation drug. So 0.125, I did over 4 months, water taper, tiny bit out every day. Micro. Yeah. And so I just hope long may it continue, my healing. I have had some strange things. Like last night, I got some weird feeling when I took the mirtazapine across my head, and you know, there's still weird stuff that goes on, but nothing at the moment, touching wood, that is just really like destabilizing me. If I do too much, then I feel it. You know, I get nerve pain, I get some weird stuff going on. So I just have to take it easy. And also, yeah, my mirtazapine taper, I don't know how that's going to go because actually that drug, I did try. In one of the moments I paused the drug and I left it a couple of months, I thought, okay, I'll try the mirtazapine. And it was so hard to move. I went down from 30 to 27.5, which was brutal. Then I tried another 2.5, and I think that got me down to 25. And it was brutal. I ended up with these symptoms where I thought I had akathisia and the whole thing had come back. I was also living with my mum and trying to get out of there, and she was causing me a lot of stress, and stress for symptoms and when you're harmed is not good. But the mirtazapine was tough. So it really, really affected my sleep as well. Like as soon as I move it, I just don't sleep. So that's my next one to conquer. And I really hope that I can get off it and carry on sleeping. But I'm going to do a micro taper. Anyway, that's it from me. I just wanted to chat about that, but sorry that I just look like an absolute state. But sometimes it's quite nice to see, isn't it? People just looking like states. Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, like I've been helping people now for the last kind of 2 or 3 years, and I'm currently training as a transpersonal counsellor. So what that means is it's like more of a spiritual type of counselling, the stuff that we can't explain, which is a lot of life in my belief, you know, and it's not all textbook, it's not all logical. So yeah, I'm training, I'm on my, second year of the training to become a licensed therapist. So I call myself a coach at the moment, a psych med withdrawal coach. And yeah, I really enjoy helping people going through this. And I've learned a lot. I've used my instincts to get to where I am. And I've also had Hans' help, he's taught me a lot as well about tapering and really what's needed to really get off. And actually, one thing I'll leave you with is that what I realised is your jump off dose when you're really harmed has to be really low. I went to 0.01 of quetiapine and Lorazepam. I went down to the last spec. And I just think, why not? And I was having symptoms at 0.06 of quetiapine. So I just think it's really important. Lots of love.